All right, let's go ahead and solve this problem. The question is, find the arccosh of square root of x's derivative with respect to x, okay? So there's a couple of ways you can approach this, of course, and it also depends on what you remember. So if you remember the derivative of arccosh, which is equal to 1 over the square root of x squared minus 1, when x is a number greater than or equal to 1, oh, strictly greater than 1 because we don't want the denominator to be 0, then we can use this fact. So I'm going to approach this the first way, okay? So if I use that fact, then we're simply going to use chain rule. It is going to look like 1 over square root of the input squared. So the square root of x quantity squared minus 1 times the derivative of the square root of x, which we know that it is equal to 1 over 2 root x. Okay? Now, one thing that you need to keep in mind here is that square root of x quantity squared is equal to the absolute value of x. Okay? So if we want to make sure that things work out nicely, for example, here we know that the denominator may contain a 0, or we know that inside the square root we want to avoid negative numbers so that we don't get imaginary numbers. So if we use those kind of assumptions, we can try to say things such as, okay, what if x is greater than 1? Well, under this condition, we know that absolute value of x will end up being x. So if we want to make the calculations look simpler, we want to add these assumptions to make this look like the absolute value of 2 root x times the square root of x minus 1, assuming that x is greater than 1. So that's one way to solve this thing. The other way to approach this problem is, if you remember that cosh inverse of x is equal to the natural log of x plus square root of x squared minus 1, where x is greater than or equal to 1, then we are going to take the derivative of a natural log, basically, and then we're going to approach it with the chain rule multiple times. So I'm not going to go into detail, but simply put, we're going to have it in the form 1 over x plus the square root of x squared minus 1. And instead of x, you would be using the square root of x. And the same argument is going to appear with this expression. And you will be multiplying the derivative of the input, which is going to be the derivative of this expression, with, of course, the square root substituted in. Okay, and then we should get the exact same result. And that's how you find the derivative of arccosh.